Hello everyone, I am Terror, the torturous red squirrel.
And I'm Mr. Tuggles, the annoying stuffed penguin. And as you can see, I'm in a bit of a predicament right now. So I made a deal with Terror.
That's right. Mr. Tuggles gave me the idea of sharing my love for torture with all of you for the exchange of temporary freedom.
Yeah, what we... Temporary?
Torture is the act of inflicting pain on another individual for the purpose of punishing them, making them do something for us, or for more of a pleasurable purpose.
For centuries, we have used multiple methods of torture, including physical, mental, and social torture. For this list, we will not be talking about executions, as those could fill their own list. But if it's an execution that tortures the victim to death, then we will count it.
For example, the guillotine will not be available on the list, as it's meant to kill victims instantly. And the only way it could torture someone is as if there was a malfunction.
We can't simply make one list of torture, so this could become a new series for me and Terror.
This is why we're only talking about 10 forms of torture today. So, we have loads more options in the future. So without further ado, let's begin with the top 10 methods of torture from history, Volume 1.
Yeah, what we... The pillory. The pillory was a torture device used for more than just physical torture, but also humiliation. The victim would have their hands and head inserted into the appropriate holes of the device so they would be secured. Normally, these devices would be put into a very public area such as marketplaces, crossroads, and more. Once the word went around that someone was locked inside the pillory, many citizens would excitedly run over to properly humiliate the victim, from shouting insults and slurs and throwing objects at them. After 1816, England used the pillory as punishment for perjury or subornation. However, they were abolished from England in 1837. The last person to be put into the pillory would be Peter James Bossy in 1830. He was convicted for willful and corrupt perjury. Yeah, what we...
HERETIC'S fork, consisting of a long piece of metal with two opposed bi-pronged forks, as well as an attached belt or strap. The heretic's fork would be placed between the throat and breastbone and kept together with a leather strap. Usually the victim would be hung upright so they couldn't lay down. If someone had heretic's fork on, they wouldn't be able to talk or sleep. If they got too tired or put their head down, the prong would pierce their neck and chest. This device was mainly used for more religious purposes, particularly for those who are liars, blasphemers, and those who speak of the Lord's name in vain.
Yeah, what we... Flaying. A rather gruesome torture. Flaying was the act of peeling off the victim's skin and keeping removed skin intact. Of course, humans have used this act on animals so they can be properly cooked or have their fur be used as cloth. But why would this be done to humans? Well, for many reasons. For example, during the Ashurnasirpal II era, between 883 and 859 BC, it was a tradition to flay the prisoners. The Neo-Assyrian kings would gloat at these terrible deaths with little to no remorse. Yeah, what we...
ABACINATION. One of your sight was stripped away from you. Of course, there are people who are naturally blind, but what if you could see clearly, but one day it was taken away from you as a form of punishment? How would they do it? Just shine a flashlight in your eye for a few hours? No. That's too tame. I present to you ABACINATION, the method of using a hot melting plate to make another blind by burning their eyelids with the metal. This is a torture used in ancient times, mainly in ancient Persia. However, this was done differently in ancient Persia. For them, they would use a corrosive chemical contained in 2 cups, both with rotten bottoms. They would be held over the prisoner's eyes as he or she would be strapped down for what was about to come next. This chemical would eventually eat away at the victim's eyes.
Yeah, what we...
Hey guys, it's me, Bisexual Boxers, the most bisexual pair of boxers you ever seen in your life. Anyway, I'm here to tell you about a very special torture, the only one that I would ever like in my entire life. Let's begin, shall we? The dominatrix is a woman of any sexual orientation that takes a dominant role in BDSM tortures. These could go from whipping, spanking, slate burning, such as melting wax, and even verbal torture. Calling the submissive winker any kind of name I probably shouldn't say on here. The earliest example of a dominatrix may she be as beautiful as the radiance of the rainbow. The ancient Mesopotamia goddess Inanna, as she would perform a dominating behavior to force men and gods to submit to her. Oh, what an elegant woman! But, before I go, I must answer one question. Is there a male equivalent to the dominatrix? Of course! But they go by the term, the Dominic.
Baby, do yourself a favor and run.
Oh, why? What's going on?
Yeah, what we... Judas Cradle. The Judas Cradle, also known as the Judas Chair, is a torture device where the victim would be strapped into a harness above the pointed seat. They would then be slowly lowered onto the device, forcing their anus or vagina, depending on their gender, to stretch and expand in an extremely painful manner. Then, to extreme pressure and stretching of the orifice. And lastly, with the tearing of the muscles, which, if not treated, could lead to an infection. And in those times, we didn't have the same medical advancements, so a small infection could easily lead to death for almost anyone. Yeah, what we...
Rat torture. From being simple household pests to causing dozens of deaths with the bubonic plague, rats have marked their way on the history, not by being an enemy or an ally, but a nuisance. But not for all. Some of them can be kept as pets, like goldfish, cats, or dogs, but others keep them for a much more horrifying purpose. Rat-based torture is performed in a number of ways, but one of the most famous ways is eating human flesh. One famous and gruesome method is to put them in a container with an empty bottom, put the rats on the victim's stomach, using the container to hold them in. Then the torturers warm up the inside of the container, forcing the rats to try and escape, but with only one way out: dig through the flesh of the victim, causing a slow and painful death. Imagine one or more of these small nuisances crawling through your insides as a desperate attempt at their own escape.
Yeah, what we...
Impalement. Ever heard of Vlad Dracula? He was a prince of Wallachia 3 times, and was born in 1428, and possibly 1431, and died on 1476, possibly 1477. There's no exact number, really. He was the main inspiration for the famous war monster Dracula, and there's a good reason for that, for he would always be known for his cruel acts to others. His most famous and personal favorite torture was impalement. Impalement is where the human body is penetrated by a sharp object, such as sticks, hooks, pipes, spears, and so on. There are also many variations of impalement, such as the bamboo torture, being hung by the ribs, hooks in the city, and gouging. Some places still practice impalement to this day, despite the inhumane nature of the torture. But then again, we can say that about almost all of these.
Yeah, what we... Force feeding. While not being portrayed as a fetish on DeviantArt, force feeding is when you feed something against its will. Well, obviously. This can be done for a number of reasons, such as when prisoners go on hunger strike, or by an envious individual that wanted to make their rival overweight for they believe it would make them unattractive. In the Middle Eastern country, Mauritania, women are force-fed 1,600 calories a day to prepare them for marriage. For a bit of perspective, that's 4 times the amount a bodybuilder would eat. It's believed by some in Mauritania that bigger women are superior to that of thin women. It's truly sad to hear about something like this, especially since most of these girls have done nothing to deserve it. Before we move on to number 1, we must ask if you are sexually attracted to larger people. We respect that, but not if you force it upon them. Yeah, what we...
Brazen Bull. You wanna know why this is number 1? Because it's my personal favorites! The Brazen Bull is a torture device modeled after a bull made of bronze. The victim would be locked inside the bull, as those who are punishing the victim would light a fire under it, thus cooking the victim. The surface would become unbearable. The air would be too hot to breathe, and the only source of fresh air would come from a breathing tube that, when exhaled through, would mimic the sound of a bull. The Brazen Bull was first built in ancient Greece by Parallos of Athens, and was sent over to the tyrant of Acrocus Phalaris to be approved. Parallos thought he would be rewarded for his invention. However, Phalaris did not like what he heard, so he ordered Parallos to test the sound system. When he was all the way in, he was locked inside by Parallos and cooked alive as punishment. But Parallos was not killed by the bull, as he was released last minute and threw the barely breathing man off of a hill, properly